All right, YouTube, France time, and this one's a fucking banger. Love to see this. We already showed a little bit in the U.S. news. We already showed a little bit in the new U.S. news. I did one stream so far. Well, you got to start somewhere. Make sure you like and subscribe. Follow Chad Mary. Hot political content. Hot. You will burn yourself. Check it out. We need well-informed progressives on this goddamn corporate dystopia that is Twitch. But welcome back, everybody. Welcome back, YouTube. France kicking ass, showing us how to get things done. Just got to show more of this protest footage. This is how you do. This is exactly what I'm talking about. This is step 3. Step 1, inform yourself. Step 2, join a progressive political organization that will help organize something like this. And then step 3, you show up and you don't leave. That's step 3. Put in the work. This is putting in the work. This is how you create change. It's the only thing that ever works. It's the only thing that ever works. Let me remind you, it's the only thing that ever works. The fucking Twitter campaigns, the motherfucking writing letters to your politicians, they throw that shit in the trash. This is the only thing that fucking works. This is what they fear. The oligarchy, the empire. This is what they fear. You know, bring some smoke, bring a fucking 6-pack, kick back and have some fun, but don't leave. Don't let this happen to you, right? Where the cops fucking, charge you and then you're like, you get scared and you got to go. Just go to a different spot. But continue to loiter. Continue to disrupt. You don't got to light anything on fire. He drops his baton. What are they? Look what they're trying to do. Look how big the crowd is. Jesus Christ. Look at him, just indiscriminately using his baton to hit people in the head. Yeah. So this is the right-wing response to what is undeniably power. This is real power right here. This is where they get all their power, is from these individuals. This is how it's done. Well, I tell you, Iran really, I understand that Iran is like kind of in between a rock and a hard place when it comes to the West, but you're really not doing yourself any favors, saddling up your horse to the fucking Russian empire. And now here we go. Iran saying, we strongly condemn the crackdown on peaceful protests by the French people. We call on the French government to respect human rights and avoid using force against its people who are pursuing their demands in a peaceful manner. Iran saying that. Iran. If you don't know what's going on in Iran, the theocratic government that is controlled there is cracking down so hard on protests and female and women empowerment that there's teenagers and young people are getting killed in the streets protesting their right to show their hair, to not have to wear a hijab, all right, to not be persecuted by what they call the morality police. So here's Iran over here. Oh man, that French government, so the fact is that they know they're being hypocritical, but what they're trying to do is a kind of a whataboutism argument on the big global stage, right? Well, how you dare criticize Iran, but look how you treat your own people situation. As if the two are just apples to apples. Like what Iran is doing to its people is just exactly the same what Macron is doing to the French people. Pretty disgusting. Pretty gross. And I thought this was good. TLDR news is a little generic. It's a little millennial, kind of friendly. It feels very placid, but at the same time, really good information. And this is a really good rundown of the entire situation. I think she already left, Lenny. But this is just a good rundown of, okay, how did this start? Where are we at now? What does the future look? TLDR does a really good, I mean, that's in their name, right? You know, was it too long didn't read, right? That's what they do. They kind of do a really good encapsulation of the whole situation. So, and they did a really good one for France here. So let's go ahead and watch it.
This video was brought to you by Ground News.
Yeah.
For
Ground
the
News
last
is
few
cool.
weeks, France has been consumed by nationwide protests against Emmanuel Macron's pension reforms, which plan to simplify France's convoluted pension system and, more significantly, increase the pension age from 62 to 64. Despite the massive protests, though, President Macron has stubbornly persisted, and on Thursday, he took things a step further by using a constitutional technicality to force his reforms through the National Assembly.
See, I did not know that. I didn't know that he was just literally forcing this through, not even running it by the people
without a vote. As you'd expect, this has triggered a furious reaction from both the French public and
Thank you so much, everyone, staying here late in the night.
Who are now trying to bring down the government. So in this video, we're going to
getting
take
close
a
to
look
the
at
end of the stream.
Macron's pension reforms, why they've gone down so badly in France, and whether this could be the end of Emmanuel Macron. To understand why the French are quite so grumpy about pension reform, you're going to need a bit of context. France's retirement age was originally cut from 65 to 60 in the early 1980s under socialist president Francois Mitterrand. And basically every French president since then has struggled to overhaul this change. President Jacques Chirac's right-wing government tried to overhaul the pension system in 1995, but was met with such intense...
Hey, thank you for that follow. Glass by Glenn. Do you make like pipes to smoke weed out of?
Protests and strikes that these reforms were dropped. His successor, President Nicolas Sarkozy, also on the right, managed to increase the retirement age from 60 to 62.
You might be asking yourself, hey, how come all these, how come the super left wing, like super independent, super liberty focused French, democracy, why do they keep voting in these right wingers? Well, it's the same problem that the left has everywhere. Participation, folks. That's the reason. The left doesn't show up to vote, but the right does.
But it took months of authority-sapping nationwide strikes and protests to even achieve this. Then President Francois Hollande, Sarkozy's socialist successor, somewhat sneakily reformed the system by leaving the headline minimum retirement age at 62 in place, but enacting a gradual increase in contribution years required to receive a full pension. Then, though, it was Emmanuel Macron's turn to try and tinker with the system. In 2019, he originally wanted to do a complete overhaul of the system by unifying 42 special pensions regimes that covered 42 different sectors. Now, this unsurprisingly sparked nationwide protests and strikes, which, coupled with the COVID pandemic, which broke out not long after, forced the government to rethink its priorities and shelve the reform. Then, during his re-election campaign in 2022, he pledged to increase the minimum retirement age from 62 to 65, but suggested that he'd be willing to compromise on 64 instead.
And by not merciful.
Regardless, Macron was duly re-elected last year, and, well, that brings us to now. The French government's current proposed reform is to increase the minimum retirement age from 62 to 64 and increase the number of years of work required to earn a full pension to 43. These reforms will be implemented gradually, though, by 2030 and 2027 respectively. The reforms would also bring an end to many so-called special regimes with different requirement ages for different professions, including railway, electricity, and gas workers.
I mean, that actually makes sense to me, though, because certain jobs are more dangerous and more backbreaking than others. You know what I mean? Like the guy who does a lifetime of road construction, he's going to probably need to retire earlier because of, the damage he did to his body doing that work. This actually makes perfect sense to me. And of course, they'd want to get rid of it.
However, lower retirement ages would be maintained for certain categories of workers, including police and firefighters, whose jobs are deemed physically or mentally arduous enough to justify this. The government would also increase the guaranteed minimum pension for low-income workers to 85% of net minimum wage. Altogether, the government argues that these changes are necessary to ensure that the pension system is financially viable and prevent a major financial deficit in the future, when the French population continues to get older.
And this is a problem we're seeing with a lot of different countries. Japan is another one. And, you know, of course, their solution is, well, the middle class need to suffer more. The middle class need to sacrifice more. It's never a question of going after the multi-billionaires that are just ever increasing. More and more billionaires every year, even in socialist countries like France. We can't have a conversation about that. People are making money. Hey, man, things must be good then. We just got to keep cutting from the middle class.
The new system would also bring France more in line with the rest of Western Europe, where the pension age is generally between 65 and 67. However, that doesn't mean that the French people like
Should be 50.
with polling suggesting that some 2/3 of the French public oppose these reforms. And for months now, there have been widespread strikes and protests against them. In fact, France's 8 main trade union bodies have been unusually united, and there have been multiple days of national action across the country. Nonetheless, though, on Sunday, the Conservative-dominated Senate voted through the reforms by 195 votes to 112, moving them to a final decisive vote in the National Assembly, which was due to take place on Thursday. Now, this vote was always going to be tough for the government. Macron lost his majority last year, and the two largest opposition groups, the left-wing NUPES alliance and the far-right National Rally, were both vehemently opposed to the government's proposal. So, despite receiving Senate approval, it looked unlikely it was going to progress any further than this, at least if there had to be a vote. So, when it became clear that the government lacked a majority on this issue, Prime Minister Elisabeth Borne announced that she would trigger Article 49.3 of the French Constitution to force through the bill without a vote. Now, this didn't go down too well with the opposition, who sang the national anthem in the assembly to prevent her from announcing the declaration.
Thank you for the people that are here late at night. Thank you very much.
Now, Article 49.3 is an article of the French Constitution which basically allows the government to turn any bill into a no-confidence vote. Essentially, this means that the government can force its legislation through without a vote, but in return, opposition lawmakers will have 24 hours to file a no-confidence motion in the government.
Wow, now, what a fucking rule. Whoa, dude. They have the right to do what they want, but if they do what they want, you have the right 24 hours to take a vote of no confidence right then and there. Holy shit, what a fucking rule. That's kind of awesome.
Now, the use of Article 49.3 is by no means unprecedented. In fact, this marks the 100th time it's been used since its introduction in 1958. But this is certainly a risky move by the government, and that's because both the public and the opposition have reacted furiously to its implementation.
So this reaction can force that no confidence vote to happen. So that kind of explains the urgency here.
Macron's far-right rival Marine Le Pen described it as a total failure, and the Communist Party's leader claimed that Parliament had been ridiculed and humiliated. It wasn't just politicians, though. Almost immediately after the announcement, riots kicked off across France, including near the National Assembly. And this isn't just an isolated incident either. Polling suggests that over 80% of the French public think that this move was a mistake, not least because multiple government politicians promised that this mechanism wouldn't be used just weeks beforehand. And the opposition parties have taken notice of this anger, so they've already tabled confidence motions in the government, known as motions of censure, which will probably be voted on early next week. If successful, this could annul the pension reforms, trigger the fall of the Prime Minister and the cabinet, and probably force Macron to call new parliamentary elections. However, that being said, history suggests that censure motions are unlikely to succeed. Even since Macron's alliance lost its majority last year, every no-confidence vote against his government has failed. And that's because, generally speaking, these people just don't get on all that well. The left don't want to vote for motions tabled by the right don't want to vote for motions tabled by the left, and the mainstream conservative Republicans don't want to vote for anything which will bring down the government, especially not hand-in-hand with the hard
This is depressingly
left
familiar.
or far right. So, with the left-wing NUPES alliance and far-right National Rally both quickly confirming that they would be tabling motions of censure, that same dynamic...
The gold microphone stands? No. I really hate it when governments have gaudy displays of wealth, you know, because they do this in America. The like Capitol Hall, in any major city will have this big golden spire at the top. I think it's really gaudy. I think this is really gross. It should be an economical, and it should be more like this, you know, a simple economic. It shouldn't be some fucking golden spire. Oh.
Dynamic looks likely to play out once again. But this time round, something different is happening. A small regionalist grouping in the National Assembly called Liberties, Independence, Overseas and Territories have also filed a cross-partisan motion of censure that has already won support from the NUPES alliance.
They might be able to do
the
it.
National Rally. However, even with this unusual unified support, they still need the Republicans' support to reach the 50% threshold of 287 votes.
Well, they're not
As
quite
such,
there.
30 Republican lawmakers would need to back the motion if it has any chance of succeeding.
And that's where the
But
protests
since
come in.
the party's boss has said that the party will not back any censure motions, this doesn't look likely to succeed, even given the newfound cross-party unity. However, that doesn't mean that Macron is safe by any means. It's entirely possible that some Republicans break rank to vote to bring down the government. Those MPs might reason that while they don't necessarily want to bring down the government, they don't really want to be associated with the pension reforms or the controversial use of Article 49.3. So they might be tempted to vote for the censure motion as the lesser of two evils.
Wash your hands of
this is especially
this.
likely to happen if massive protests continue with the same vigor, which could spook some Republican MPs.
That's
All in all,
that's
then,
where
while
that's the
invoking
pressure.
The nuclear option of Article 49.3 might have got Macron's flagship reform over the line, his political trouble is far from over. And next week looks like it's lining up to be make or break for him. And if you want to follow...
There you go, folks. You see what I mean? I mean, TLDR, they really do a good job of encapsulating the whole issue there. Like and subscribe. Check them out. I highly recommend it. Like I said, it's a little placid. It's a little, I'm on painkillers, but what can you do? A lot of people like their information delivered this way. So, but yeah, so that is very interesting. We might see if the coalition right now can squeak out 30 Republican voters that are being pressured by their people in the continued riots. We might see a no confidence vote go through, and Macron having to, be forced to do another election, which would be very interesting. Because you're going into an election after failing to change a major, element of French society. So you're looking, your ass is bare red out there, and it's ready to be spanked even harder. That's interesting. So stay tuned to the News Underground. We'll be covering French protests, as they develop. So stay tuned.